Thursday, October 16, 1958, at 9:14 p.m. location, the rooftop of the building at 424 West 49th Street and 10th Avenue, Hell's Kitchen, Manhattan, New York. Recorded temperature 58 degrees Fahrenheit, clear sky, wind blowing from the Hudson River eastward. 10 floors separated the rooftop from the street level, about 98 feet from the edge of the roof down to the pavement below. At the center of the rooftop stood a black woman, Mayme Hatcher Johnson, 34 years old. Her hands were restrained, her lips bloodied, yet her eyes showed absolutely no fear. Surrounding her in a semicircle were 7 men, each one Italian Mafia. Each one carried close combat weapons, steel pipes, metal pipe sections, belts wrapped around brass knuckles. Their purpose was to deliver a message through humiliation and pain. This group belonged to the Genovese crime family, which controlled numerous operations in Hell's Kitchen, underground gambling dens, protection rackets, loan sharking, and shops along 10th Avenue. Leading the group that night was Anthony "Tony the Blade" Romano, 41 years old, notorious for his brutality and habit of using violence to assert power. Romano stepped forward, his gaze cold and sharp. Staring straight at Maim, he said, "We're sending a message to Harlem." His men burst into laughter. None of them knew who the woman in front of them was. None knew she was the wife of the man Harlem, both respected and feared. Romano gave a slight nod. 2 mafia men grabbed Maim's arms, dragging her to the edge of the roof. Then a hard shove. Her body fell from the roof, 98 feet, in about 2.1 seconds. The impact should have ended everything the moment she hit the pavement, but she did not die. And to understand why that night led to that moment, we must go back 3 weeks. Thursday, September 25, 1958, Harlem, New York. Maim, 34 years old, wife of Bumpy Johnson, was one of the most respected figures in Harlem. Not because she was Bumpy's wife, but because of her intelligence, courage, and ability to resolve community conflicts that pastors, shop owners, and women in the neighborhood trusted. Bumpy held the power in Harlem. Maim held its dignity. That evening, Maim went to Il Vapore restaurant on 10th Avenue to meet a friend. Il Vapore was a hangout for Italians right in the heart of Hell's Kitchen. As she stepped through the door, Maim saw a scene that set everything in motion. A white man pinned face down on a table by 2 Genovese crime family members, while a third poured something into his drink glass, a familiar form of extortion in the area. Maim stood there for only a few seconds, but that was enough for Anthony Romano, who was in the back room, to see and remember the unfamiliar face that had appeared. A black woman witnessing that in Hell's Kitchen. To Romano, nothing was more troublesome. A black witness was an easily disposable witness. No one would investigate deeply. No one would ask questions. A missing body in this neighborhood was routine. Maim left Il Vapore unaware that 2 men were following her. At the same time, in Harlem, Bumpy Johnson was at Small's Paradise on 7th Avenue, settling a numbers dispute between 2 groups within the community. He did not know his wife had accidentally stepped into Genovese territory. He did not know Romano was looking to expand numbers operations northward into Harlem, directly threatening the livelihood. Bumpy had guarded for years. Romano saw Harlem as untapped territory. He believed that if he intimidated one loud enough figure, Harlem would stay silent. When his men reported back that the black woman at Il Vapore had clearly witnessed everything, Romano made the decision in seconds. Handle it. Leave no trace. But he wanted more than that. He wanted to turn it into a message. A black woman thrown off a building in Hell's Kitchen would make Harlem understand that the Genovese family would not be taken lightly. What Romano did not know, and did not bother to check, was the identity of that woman. No one knew she was the wife of the man all of Harlem simply called Bumpy Johnson, and that very ignorance was the greatest mistake of Romano's life. Friday, October 10th, 1958, Harlem, New York. A week after Maim unwittingly witnessed the extortion at Il Vapore, Romano began preparing a clean handling plan. No use of anything that could let police or FBI trace back. He wanted a fall, a death recorded as an accident, and a warning loud enough for Harlem to understand the Genovese family was moving north. It all started with a fake invitation. That evening, Maim attended a charity event at Abyssinian Baptist Church, where she often helped raise funds for struggling families. When the event ended, a young woman approached, introducing herself as an acquaintance of an old friend of Maim's and saying her friend was in trouble in Midtown and needed Maim's help right away. The message seemed genuine. Nothing appeared out of place. And more importantly, Maim's nature was always to help others. She agreed. When Maim stepped out of Harlem and into the waiting black Ford, the two men inside exchanged a quick glance. The car door closed. The Ford left Lenox Avenue, crossed 125th Street, and headed south toward Hell's Kitchen. When the car stopped at the corner of West 49th and 10th Avenue, Maim knew something was wrong. There was no friend here, only silence and the cold stares of the two men. They led Maim up the fire escape of 424 West 49th Street, a 10-story red brick building whose upper floors were used for storage and avoided by Hell's Kitchen locals because of Genovese family illegal activities. On the rooftop, 4 more men were already waiting, grouped near the edge. Romano appeared. Minutes later, dark coat, face showing nothing but annoyance at having to handle what he saw as just a black witness. He asked his men, "Sure about this?" They nodded. Romano looked at Maim, a poised, calm black woman, no screaming, no panic. That made him pause slightly, but not long enough to see the sign of a mistake. They searched her purse for a phone or notes, found nothing. One asked, "Want to say anything before we finish?" Maim straightened her back, looked straight at Romano. "My husband won't let this go." The group burst into laughter. The sound echoed over Hell's Kitchen like the cheapest noise in the city. Romano waved his hand. "Your husband? In Harlem? Harlem doesn't reach this far." To him, Harlem was a poor district, not worth caution. He didn't know the man's name. He didn't know where he stood in the numbers rackets, gambling, black politics, and larger crime networks. He only knew one thing: eliminate the witness, and nothing was cleaner than a fall. 2 men gripped Maim's arms tightly, dragging her to the roof's edge. She did not resist. She knew she couldn't run. She kept her back straight, as if stepping into a room instead of standing at the brink. Romano stood behind, saying, "Finish it." Their hands tightened. A brief pause. A shove. Maim's body lost support and fell from the edge, plunging through 98 feet of air. In those 2.1 seconds of falling, she did not scream. In that moment, the only thing in her mind was Bumpy's face and the absolute certainty that when he found out, Hell's Kitchen would pay. And that was exactly what turned Romano's mistake into fate. In the first half-second, her speed reached nearly 16 feet per second. After 1 second, gravity pulled her faster, wind whipping her face, clothes flapping in the gusts from the Hudson. Acceleration of 32 feet per second squared increased her fall speed steadily, and by 2.1 seconds, when her body struck the first point of impact, her estimated speed was around 47 miles per hour. 47 miles per hour was enough to shatter a spine if falling straight down. Enough for instant death if head or chest took the full force. But what saved Maim was the angled fall. When she was about 12 feet from the pavement, her body rotated slightly due to a crosswind, causing her left side to hit first. She did not strike the pavement, but slammed onto the roof of an illegally parked old truck along 10th Avenue. The metal roof dented deeply, absorbing most of the impact force. The collision sounded like a gunshot. Maim's body bounced onto the sidewalk, rolled once, and lay face down, motionless. The impact broke her left femur in two, cracked ribs 7 and 8, dislocated her left shoulder, and caused rapid subcutaneous bleeding around her lower back. But her skull did not fracture. Her spine did not break. She remained conscious. She was still alive. 2 young black men stepping out of a nearby grocery store heard the noise, saw the dented truck roof and the woman's body on the ground. They ran over, at first thinking she was drunk or a traffic accident victim. But when they gently turned her face, both froze. They recognized her instantly. Mayme Hatcher Johnson, wife of Bumpy Johnson. One stammered, "My God," she was pushed. The other looked up at the building roof, then whispered, "Don't call the police. The Mafia will come and finish her off." They knew exactly how Hell's Kitchen operated. Calling the police now would be like signing a death warrant for both victim and informants. While they frantically figured out how to move her, an elderly woman living nearby ran up. She recognized Maim, asked nothing more. "Help me, support her right side, pull her into the alley." The alley was just steps away, dark and hidden from street view. They dragged Maim inside, careful to keep her head stable. Maim opened her eyes, breathing ragged, voice weak but clear. Each word chosen carefully, no extra sound. "Call my husband, tell him. Genovese, 10 floors, West 49th. After that sentence, she closed her eyes, but she was still breathing, still alive, and with that much information, those who heard understood immediately that a storm was being summoned to Hell's Kitchen, a storm named Bumpy Johnson. Thursday, October 16th, 1958, Harlem, New York, at 9:32 p.m., on the upper floor of Small's Paradise on 7th Avenue, Bumpy Johnson was meeting with Marcus Webb and 3 trusted men. The meeting concerned the Genovese family starting to send scouts to number shops along 135th Street. Marcus was presenting when the door burst open. A young man rushed in, face pale, speaking no more than 10 words. "Your wife pushed off a building, 10 floors. West 49th, Genovese." Bumpy raised his head. His expression changed instantly. He pushed back his chair and walked straight down the stairs without a word. Marcus signaled the 3 to follow. The Buick started, rolling away from 7th Avenue westward. When the car turned into the 10th Avenue area, the messenger pointed to a dark alley beside West 49th Street. "In there." Bumpy got out and walked into the alley. Maim lay on the ground, breathing heavily but steadily, showing clear signs of a violent impact. Her left femur displaced to one side, left rib area darkly bruised, left shoulder out of position. She was still conscious. The 3 Harlem residents kneeling beside her immediately stood when they saw Bumpy. They said nothing. He asked nothing. He looked at Maim, showing no emotion, then knelt beside her. She opened her eyes when she sensed him near. She tried to speak, voice very low but clear. "Don't let them touch Harlem." Bumpy leaned closer. "They won't touch anything anymore." At that moment, Marcus led Freddie into the alley. Freddie, A former WWE medic was the only one Bumpy trusted to check wounds without a hospital. Freddy ran his hands along the femur, ribs, hip, then checked her pupils. He spoke quickly. Broken left femur, 2 cracked ribs, dislocated left shoulder. No sign of spinal fracture, can be moved if stabilized. No hospital. Freddy looked at Bumpy. No explanation needed. Everyone understood that a woman pushed off a mafia rooftop who appeared in hospital records would be finished that same night. Marcus signaled 2 men to use a wooden plank to lift Maim into a car behind the alley. Before the car door closed, Bumpy placed his hand on her arm. Just one look that anyone witnessing would understand this story would not end at a warning. As the car drove off, Marcus turned and asked, "What do you want us to do?" Bumpy stood in the alley, facing the Hell's Kitchen buildings. He said each word, 2 hours, gather everyone. Everyone, everything. Marcus nodded and left immediately. He knew everything meant the full force, trusted men, gambling crews, numbers runners, those who owed Bumpy favors, those who saw him as Harlem's pillar. No one would refuse this call, not when his wife had been thrown off a 10-story roof. Bumpy left the alley, stepping onto the street without looking back. Within less than 3 minutes, phones across Harlem began ringing. Back doors of numbers shops opened. Messengers ran along Lenox Avenue. Unmarked cars left the lot behind Small's Paradise. One order spread, assemble in 2 hours. Not a minute late, and amid the movement across Harlem preparing for a night, unlike any before, no one questioned the target. Everyone knew. The Genovese family had touched the wrong person, and from the moment Bumpy saw his wife lying in that dark alley, the fate of those responsible was sealed. When word reached Harlem that Maim had been thrown off a 10-story roof, those who heard did not ask why or where, only one question: does Bumpy know yet? When the answer was he knows, all of Harlem shifted like a machine switched on. Marcus Webb left the West 49th Alley before Maim's car. When he reached Small's Paradise, 12 men were already waiting, though none had been called. Within the next 5 minutes, 20 more appeared. By 10 p.m., the number reached 40. No one had been formally summoned. No one asked for payment. They came for one reason. Bumpy Johnson's wife had been pushed off a roof by the Italian Mafia. That meant Harlem was threatened. And when Harlem was threatened, the whole neighborhood rose. Marcus stepped onto the small platform behind the bar in Small's Paradise meeting room. No one made noise. Marcus unfolded a large Manhattan map, pinned it to the board. It was the map Bumpy still used to analyze gang territories in the city. He pointed to the center of Hell's Kitchen. 5 points. Tonight we hit 5 points. He didn't need to explain why, but he read the list anyway. Target by target: Barbetta Social Club, Romano's Stronghold. Tonight they'll have 10 to 12 guys there, maybe more. His finger moved. Il Vapor Restaurant, where Maim saw the extortion. Tonight about 8 guys. A small nod from 2 who had surveilled Genovese's activity. Marcus continued. Pin, warehouse for smuggled goods and heroin. Light manpower, but heavy armament. The Lion's Den, money laundering spot in the area, usually armed guards. Windsor Garage, where they stash getaway cars. Fewest people, but must be destroyed. 5 targets, 5 strikes, all in one night, all in minutes, just like Bumpy ran every battle. Fast, precise, no chance for reaction. Marcus checked his watch. 10:05 p.m. We have over an hour to prepare. He divided teams immediately. 40 men, 6 teams, 5 strike teams, 1 reserve. Team 1 targeted Barbetta Social Club, largest 8 men, all closest associates, knew the club's layout, and at least 6 of Romano's men by face. Team 2 headed to Il Vapore, 7 men, experts in tight spaces. Team 3 hit Pier 88, 7 men, 2 sharpshooters. Team 4 hit the Lion's Den, 6 men, fast and clean. Team 5 destroyed Windsor Garage, 6 men, 1 lock expert, and 3 close combat specialists. Team 6 reserve, 6 men, ready to reach any point in 3 minutes. Each received a handgun, a knife, 2 spare magazines, no shotguns or Thompsons, while moving to avoid street checks. All heavy guns, explosives, Molotovs had been moved to an abandoned house on 47th Street, an hour earlier, per Marcus's plan. No preparation tonight fell outside the organization's familiar framework. This was not Harlem's first counterstrike, but it was the first aimed directly at Genovese. Marcus continued assignments. Team 1 and Team 4 approach from east, Team 2 and Team 5 from south, Team 3 from northwest. Reserve waits on 11th Avenue. Each team memorized it. No one repeated questions. The clock hit 10:18 p.m. when Marcus opened a smaller map, marking detailed entries, back doors, fire escapes for each of the 5 targets. This map some team members had spent days observing from afar. Harlem was strong, not just in numbers, but in knowing the enemy better than the enemy knew itself. When the clock reached 10:30 p.m., Marcus said, "Move out." 40 men left the room like a military unit trained for years. They boarded 8 different cars to avoid tailing. Each car followed its assigned route. No radios, no phone contact. All communication by motorcycle messengers. By 10:47 p.m., Team 1 reported in position around Barbetta Social Club. Lights still on inside. At least 13 people. Good. No one leaving. Team 2 reached Il Vapore at 10:49 p.m. 7 guys in the kitchen, 1 in the front. Team 3 reached Pier 88 at 10:50 p.m. 2 trucks loading, 4 guards. Team 4 reached the Lion's Den at 10:52 p.m. Front door closed but side door open. Team 5 reached Windsor Garage at 10:54 p.m. Fewest people, but successful destruction would block all Genovese escape routes. Marcus received continuous reports. Everything on rhythm, no delays. At exactly 11 p.m., all teams were in position. No action before the order. Every team waited. No one moved. No one spoke. Harlem compressed all its rage into silence before the explosion. At 11:12 p.m., a messenger ran to Marcus. "He's here." The small room on 47th Street went silent. Bumpy Johnson walked in. No need for reports. He had known since leaving the West 49th Alley that tonight must end clean. He checked his watch. 11:14 p.m. He spoke exactly 3 words. "Start, right now." Within 1 minute, the signal reached all 5 teams, and exactly as the minute hand passed 11:14 p.m., Harlem launched its assault on Hell's Kitchen. Just one understood order: finish Genovese at 5 points in minutes. And that night, no one in Hell's Kitchen realized a war had begun right at their doorstep. 11:14 p.m. Thursday, October 16, 1958. Hell's Kitchen stood still in the final seconds before being torn into 5 pieces at once. No one in the neighborhood knew Harlem had been in position for 10 minutes, that 40 men were holding their breath at street corners, behind parked cars, on opposite rooftops, all waiting for the minute hand to hit the fated number, 11:14 p.m. and 20 seconds. Marcus looked toward Bumpy, still sitting in the car at the corner of 10th Avenue and 47th Street, cold eyes fixed on the small map on his lap. Every team had been instructed, 11 hours 14 minutes and 30 seconds begin. And exactly when Marcus's watch hit 11 hours 14 minutes and 30 seconds, the 5-minute war began. The first strike came from Team 1 at Barbetta Social Club. 3 men kicked in the front door, 2 smashed the back, 3 picked the side door lock simultaneously. Romano stood near the bar, just raising a glass of red wine when he heard wood splinter. He turned, barely frowning, when 2 .45 ACP rounds went through his chest. The time he lived from seeing the black-clad figures to hitting the tile floor was 6 seconds. The remaining Mafia men jumped up, reaching for knives, pipes. A few charged the back door, but Team 1 was deep enough inside to block every exit. Thompsons fired in short bursts, not spraying but shooting, as if each round had been pre-drawn on the map. In the first 22 seconds, 9 men were down. By second 40, all 14 in Barbetta lay scattered on poker tables, behind the liquor counter, under the stairs. No survivors. Team 1 left Barbetta at 11 hours 15 minutes and 20 seconds, total attack time, 50 seconds. The second strike hit from Team 2 at Il Vapore restaurant, 11 hours 14 minutes and 32 seconds. A Molotov sailed through the window, landing on the lit gas stove. Flames erupted instantly, catching tablecloths, curtains, coats hanging nearby. Screams rose, shadows rushed toward the front door. Fatal mistake. Team 2 waited right outside. The first 4 running out dropped in 3 shots. 2 more through the kitchen door, fell as they poked heads out. One desperate man jumped the side window and caught the team leader's 7th bullet in the neck. From Molotov hitting floor to the 9th man down, 38 seconds. Team 2 did not enter. The fire consumed the front room, enough to burn all extortion records, debt ledgers, and transaction evidence of Genovese. At exactly 11 hours, 15 minutes and 10 seconds, Team 2 withdrew. 2 targets down in under a minute and a half. Team 3 at Pier 88. Warehouse started 10 seconds late due to waiting for 2 trucks to move from the main door. 11 hours 14 minutes and 40 seconds. A ship horn from the Hudson masked the footsteps of 7 Harlem men closing on the warehouse. The iron door was yanked aside. 18 Mafia men inside turned. They thought it was a truck turning. Wrong. Thompsons opened from 2 directions. 1 group from the roof, 1 from the main door. Bullet sparks flashed continuously, reflecting off wooden crates of heroin and contraband inside. The Genovese shotgun man barely raised his barrel before 3 rounds went through his head. Another charged the iron ladder to the mezzanine, but was cut down from the roof. The warehouse became a battlefield in 20 seconds. But unlike other targets, Pier 88 was wide, full of obstacles, large crates blocking sightlines. Combat lasted longer, fiercer. 11 hours 15 minutes and 20 seconds. 11 dead, 11 hours 15 minutes and 50 seconds. 4 more down behind green steel drums. 11 hours, 16 minutes and 20 seconds. The last man cornered, throwing a knife before a bullet went through his forehead. Total engagement, 1 minute 40 seconds. Team 3 withdrew. At 11 hours, 16 minutes and 30 seconds. By now, Hell's Kitchen still hadn't grasped what was happening when the 4th strike exploded at Lion's Den nightclub, Genovese's weekly money laundering spot. 11 hours 14 minutes and 31 seconds. 3 of Team 4 entered from the side door. 3 waited at the rear. Inside, 11 men, 4 on guard, 7 at the counting table. The first sound they heard was metal hitting door, as the lock was cut. The nearest guard turned, mouth opening to yell when the first bullet went through his throat. 3 Harlem men stormed in, handguns cracking precise bursts, never more than 3 rounds per target. Stacks of cash flew as 2 men clutching briefcases jumped up to flee, but before reaching the back door, Team 4 blocked it, finishing them with 2 clean shots. 1 man behind the bar threw a glass bottle but was shot through the hand and dropped instantly. In the VIP room, 1 man slammed the door, but the team leader kicked the hinge, tossed in a small flashbang that threw him off balance backward, right into a bullet from outside through his armpit. All 11 in Lion's Den eliminated in about 40 seconds. Team 4 did not leave immediately. They gathered all ledgers, documents, records and cash bags, piled them in the center, doused with gasoline, ignited. 11 hours 15 minutes and 20 seconds, flames licked the wooden ceiling, charred bills falling like black snow. Team 4 turned and withdrew, taking nothing but the absolute cleanliness of the completed target. And then Windsor Garage, the 5th target, where the night's final assault began. 11 hours 14 minutes and 29 seconds, 6 of Team 5 approached from 2 sides. 2 cut power, 1 held the front door, 3 closed on the rear. Windsor Garage had 6 Mafia men working on cars prepped for escape to Jersey if needed. When power died, the whole garage went dark. 1 flicked on a flashlight, sweeping left, but right then the front door burst open, and Harlem figures rushed in like black wind. Gunfire was not booming like at Pier 88, but sharp, dry, precise. First 3 dropped in 6 seconds. 2 more ran for the stairs to the mezzanine office, but were shot from behind by the man blocking the door. The last, the biggest, threw a wrench at a Harlem fighter, then charged like a bull, but the fighter sidestepped, let him crash into an iron pillar, then shot him point blank from 2 steps. Total time 35 seconds. Team 5 poured oil on the floor, ignited 3 cars with plates removed. Flames erupted instantly, sending up thick black smoke. At 11 hours 15 minutes and 50 seconds, Windsor Garage blazed bright across the corner, and in that second, at 5 points in Hell's Kitchen, a total of 58 Genovese members lay dead. They thought Harlem would react slowly. They thought Bumpy would fear touching Italian territory. They thought throwing Maim off a building would terrify Harlem. But 5 minutes proved the opposite. Harlem did not tremble. Harlem calculated. Harlem struck back with ruthless speed and precision. At exactly 11:16 p.m., all 5 teams vanished from the scenes almost simultaneously along pre-planned escape routes. Within 3 minutes after, small explosions from Lion's Den and Windsor Garage served as silent signals that every target was finished. When Hell's Kitchen police received the first call at 11 hours 16 minutes and 40 seconds, no Harlem presence remained at any of the 5 sites. When patrol cars reached Barbetta at 11:19, all they found were bodies amid gunpowder smell. When fire crews arrived at Lion's Den at 11:21, the wooden roof was collapsing. Pier 88 lay in eerie silence, as if the battlefield never had gunfire, but 18 bodies sprawled across crates told no lies. All Hell's Kitchen felt as if an invisible force had wiped out an entire gang in a blink. At 11:22, Marcus sent a final signal via messenger. Done. 3 minutes later, word reached Bumpy Johnson. He checked his watch, noting that from the moment Romano pushed Maim off the roof to the erasure of Genovese in Hell's Kitchen, only a little over 2 hours had passed. and from Harlem opening fire to the last Genovese falling, exactly 5 minutes, the shortest war Harlem ever waged, but no one in the Genovese family would ever forget its meaning. Touching Bumpy Johnson's wife was signing a death warrant, only 5 minutes to realize the mistake, and then no time left to correct it. Friday, October 17, 1958, at 12:04 a.m., NYPD radio lit up as if all Manhattan had been awakened at once. 5 emergency calls reporting shootings, 5 completely different locations, 5 separate police units racing with sirens blaring along the avenues. When the first unit reached Barbetta Social Club, they froze for 10 seconds just to confirm whether this was a shooting or a massacre. 14 bodies scattered across the floor, no weapon in original position, no one alive to tell what happened. Guns still warm, but the perpetrators completely gone. 2 minutes later, other units reported from Laren's Den, Il Vapor, Pier 88, and Windsor Garage. The same chilling scene. Bodies piled, no witnesses, no prolonged gunfire, no chase, only one sign. The attacks happened extremely fast, almost simultaneously, and executed by a highly organized force. Manhattan Command couldn't process the flood of information fast enough, as no night had ever seen. 5 areas go on alert at once. The Manhattan South Chief called for a special investigation, but they immediately hit a wall. No shell casings with fingerprints, no clear footprints, no cameras captured anything. 1958 had no widespread surveillance, and witnesses at each site all said the same. I didn't see anything. At Il Vapor, the first to spot the fire could only say he saw flames inside, then heard a small explosion, never saw anyone run out. At Laren's Den, cleaning staff stood stunned outside, saying they heard a loud noise, then the side door opened for a few seconds, then nothing. At Pier 88, a sailor on a docked ship said he heard like heavy rain on a tin roof for just over a minute, then silence. No one in Hell's Kitchen saw the shooters, but everyone understood who was behind it. They didn't tell police. They only whispered among themselves, in bars, on sidewalks, in dim apartments overlooking the Hudson. Harlem did this. Bumpy Johnson paid back. This is his move. But when police asked, they all answered, "Don't know." Within an hour, late-night papers began printing flash editions, and within 3 hours, the whole city had 2 names for the event that struck Hell's Kitchen like a windless storm. The Hell's Kitchen Purge. The 5-minute war. The 2 names spread across Manhattan like arrows before anyone knew who fired them. Reporters stood outside Pier 88, hurriedly noting images, describing smoke smell, burning gasoline, motionless bodies. They sought common threads to build the story, but every thread led to one terrifying conclusion: 5 locations attacked within the same minute. 5 teams of extreme professionals. The perpetrators left no trace, and the most whispered reason was one sentence someone muttered behind a reporter. They pushed the wrong woman. Manhattan police trembled at one thing. If a group could do this in 5 minutes without a trace, they could do it again anytime, and no one wanted to be next. But in Harlem, no one was surprised, because there, everyone knew an unwritten rule: touch Bumpy Johnson, and you dig your own grave. But touch his wife, that was no longer a crime, that was declaring war. And tonight, Manhattan had just witnessed a war fought in exactly 5 minutes. Dawn of October 17th, 1958, at 5:12 a.m., in a Bronx safe house, Maim opened her eyes after prolonged unconsciousness. Dim yellow light shone on the ceiling, the smell of antiseptic, mixed with stale coffee lingering somewhere in the small room. She didn't immediately remember where she was, only felt sharp pain along her ribs with every deep breath. As her eyes adjusted, the first image was Bumpy Johnson sitting beside the bed, his back slightly hunched, hands clasped, eyes never leaving his wife's face. No blazing anger, as people might expect after a night of blood. Only stillness, the kind that made the other person understand all his greatest decisions had been made in the past few hours. When Maim tried to speak, her voice a dry whisper, Bumpy immediately leaned close, gently holding her hand to avoid pain. He spoke in a low voice that seemed to settle the room with each word. "They'll never hurt anyone again." Maim didn't need to ask what happened. In Bumpy's eyes was the answer. In his stone-heavy silence was the answer. And in the distant police sirens echoing back was the answer. He hadn't just saved her. He had erased those who thought they could turn his wife into a message to Harlem. At the same time, in Lower Manhattan, in the Genovese family's underground headquarters, an unprecedented emergency meeting took place. The wide room held only 8 people, all caporregimes, consiglieri, and the temporary head since the main boss was in Sicily. Each understood that what happened last night was the largest territorial collapse Genovese had suffered since 1931. But what terrified them more was the total blind spot. No living witness, no police clue, no survivor to recount. 5 locations wiped out almost in the same minute, and everyone knew who was behind it, but no one dared speak the name aloud in front of each other. No one wanted to name a man who had just wiped out nearly 60 of their men in 5 minutes. One whispered, "If he wants war, last night was war." Another replied, "No, that was a warning." 2 hours of silence filled the room. Outside, New York began waking to scattered news reports of the horrific night in Hell's Kitchen, but in Harlem, people passed the story their own way, through the rhythm of brownstone rows, diners, barber shops. They said, "They threw the wrong woman off the wrong building." Then another replied, "Her husband is Bumpy Johnson." To Harlem, Maim became a symbol the moment she survived the 10-story fall. They saw her as proof that Harlem bowed to no power from the West. Women on 7th Avenue retold the story with pride in their voices, that a black woman survived a near 100-foot drop and rose with her husband to wipe out 5 mafia dens in one night. Children gathered outside grocery stores reading papers, asking each other, "How didn't she die?" Adults answered, "Because God knew whose wife she was." Meanwhile, Manhattan police continued investigating, but every report ended with no actionable leads. Police knew who did it. The city knew who did it, but no evidence, no trace, no testimony. A veteran detective told a young colleague, "Kid, some things in this city aren't for police to solve. This is one of them." And though major papers tried to find a more rational explanation for 5 massacres in 5 minutes, the real story spread faster than any article. That story passed mouth to mouth like legend. No room for doubt. Mayme Hatcher Johnson, the woman thrown off a Hell's Kitchen roof, survived to watch her husband turn the entire Genovese family into a lesson no one would forget. And from that night, all New York understood one thing: no one touches Harlem, and no one touches Bumpy Johnson's wife. In 1965, 7 years after the night Hell's Kitchen shook from 5 bloody minutes that Manhattan police still fumbled when mentioning, a young reporter from the New York Chronicle sought out Mayme Hatcher Johnson, hoping to retell the story the press back then couldn't touch. The planned article title was "The Woman Who Fell 10 Floors," and even before meeting Maim, He knew this story wasn't just about a fall, it was about a city, a community, and a man whose name made Hell's Kitchen fall silent whenever spoken. When the reporter reached Maim's small apartment on Lenox Avenue, he saw a woman standing straight-backed in a simple green dress, showing no sign of ever being thrown off a 10-story roof. The left leg, once broken, now normal. The lung injuries that made breathing difficult for months now left no trace. She opened the door, invited him in with a light smile, but eyes still holding the sharpness of someone who had seen death close, and refused to yield. When the reporter asked if she would recount what happened the night of October 16, 1958, she didn't dodge. She told it as if reading a chapter from a book she knew by heart. She spoke of Il Vapore, of Romano, of the 10-story roof, of wind from the Hudson, of the moment her body left the roof edge and fell amid their laughter. But when the reporter asked what everyone wanted to know, who did that to the Genovese family, Maim only smiled, tilted her chair so light fell on her face, and answered, "That has nothing to do with me. I only fell. The rest was the business of the men in this city." The reporter smiled, though he understood her answer was beautiful fog, covering a truth all Manhattan knew, but no one could prove. Bumpy Johnson was never charged. NYPD investigated. FBI opened a file temporarily. Prosecutors tried piecing clues, but every lead to Genovese never reached Harlem. 5 targets flattened, but not one shell casing, not one fingerprint, not one statement. The only ones present that night were dead. Those who knew best never spoke, and those who guessed what happened didn't dare speak. Hell's Kitchen remained lively, like any other working-class New York neighborhood. But from 1958 onward, one quiet change. No one said Bumpy Johnson's name in bars. No one spoke of Harlem with previous contempt. No one in Genovese dared let their men touch Harlem women again. Not because of police, not because of law, but because they knew the price. And that price had been paid in full in 5 minutes. The reporter asked Maim, "Do you think you were lucky to survive the fall?" Maim looked at him with eyes that instantly made him understand. She did not see herself as fate's victim. "I lived because I had to live," she said. "Harlem needed me. And she didn't need to say the name, couldn't let me go first." After the article was published, The Woman Who Fell 10 Floors spread across New York. Readers in Manhattan, Bronx, Brooklyn discussed it endlessly. The piece never mentioned Bumpy Johnson in any line about the attacks. No need. The whole city filled in the blank itself. Harlem read the article with quiet pride. They knew Maim didn't just survive a fall. She survived to become a symbol. Proof that Harlem's pride lay not in guns or clashes, but in the ability to rise after violence the world threw at them. Maim continued community work for many years after. She organized meals for poor children, raised funds for families with incarcerated members, coordinated with churches to help young women escape domestic violence. She never stood on stage recounting her historic fall. She simply did her work as if never thrown off a roof. But whenever she entered Small's paradise, older folks would touch their chests, nod in greeting, as if saluting a warrior who survived 2 different worlds. And in 1965, when the reporter asked one last question, "Do you think Romano knew who you were?" Maim gave a soft laugh, tilting her head as if the question never needed answering. "He didn't know anything," she said. "Didn't know who I was, didn't know what Harlem was, and didn't know he had just touched something he could never understand." Then she looked out the small apartment window toward Midtown Manhattan, where nightlights still twinkled on tall buildings, and spoke in a voice so light it seemed a whisper meant for the city itself. A mafia boss threw a black woman off a 10-story building. What he didn't know was that she belonged to Harlem, and Harlem always protects its own. Thank you for following the story. If you want to read the latest installments, please subscribe so you don't miss out. See you in the next journey.